The Fort Stockton Historical Society invites you to take a step back in time when gunslingers, pioneers, and ruthless lawmen ruled the Wild West, when the U.S. Army was posted to protect the frontier, and men and women were heading west to tame a wild landscape and stake a claim in their future. The Annie Riggs Memorial Museum offers a window to the past. Construction on the Riggs Hotel, originally named the Kohler Hotel, was completed in 1901, and in 1904, Annie Riggs purchased the hotel for a mere $4,750. Annie Riggs, born Annie Fraser in 1858, came to this wild territory from New Mexico at the tender age of 8. At the time, Fort Stockton was called St. Gall and was a popular stop along the stage and freight line. The lush Comanche Springs, flowing at a rate of over 60 million gallons a day, provided a desert oasis for travelers and merchants alike. These springs were also home to Native Americans on their way to Mexico. It was for this reason, in 1859, the U.S. Army erected Camp Stockton to protect travelers and this valuable water source. The Fraser family settled into life in West Texas, with Annie's father, George Fraser, who became the first county judge of Pecos County, and her brother, Bud Fraser, became the sheriff of neighboring Reeves County. Annie married Pecos County's first sheriff, James Johnson, and they had 6 children together. Barney's sister was married to Annie's brother, Bud. However, this wasn't the only thing that brought Barney Riggs to Fort Stockton. Barney was previously married in Arizona and shot Richmond Hudson, his step-cousin, who bragged about seducing his wife. This is what led to Barney's imprisonment in Yuma in 1886. In 1887, while still serving a life sentence for murder, there was a prison break attempt. While assisting the warden as a trustee, Barney saved the warden's life by killing a prisoner who was attempting to stab the warden in the neck. After pleas by the rescued warden, testimony by other guards present, and subsequent urgings by numerous Arizona press outlets, Barney was pardoned by Arizona Territorial Governor Zulick. However, friends of the slain Hudson requested a conditional pardon, that Riggs must leave Arizona and not return. The story goes that Barney killed a man to get in and killed a man to get out. Barney and his son Earl moved to Fort Stockton, and Barney married Annie Riggs on September 23, 1891. Barney was a known gunslinger. However, some said Barney never killed anyone that didn't need killing. This was the case in 1896 when the Miller Gang was terrorizing West Texas. Bud Fraser, the sheriff of Reeves County, had a number of gunfights with Jim Miller and his gang. He shot Miller once, and although injured, Miller survived. It was said that he wore a breastplate made of metal. On September 14, 1896, Bud was shot by Jim Miller in an elaborate setup in a saloon in Toyah, Texas. Everything had been calculated ahead of time. Miller walked into the saloon, and while Bud was playing cards, shot him at a relatively close range in the head with a shotgun. This set off the major feud between Barney Riggs and the Miller Gang. Barney set out at hatching a plan to bring the Miller Gang down himself. 3 weeks after Bud was murdered, Barney rode with Annie and family to Toyah, and from there rode into Pecos City, where the Miller Gang was waiting for him. After a 2-day cat-and-mouse game, Barney finally shot and killed William Earhart and John Denson at the Johnson and Hurd Saloon. Barney went on trial for the killings in Alpine, but was acquitted on the grounds that it was self-defense. Another colorful character associated with Riggs was a man by the name of Andrew Jackson Royal. The Royal family came to Fort Stockton from Junction, Texas in 1889. And before long, he had made it clear that he was a force to be reckoned with. A.J. Royal feuded with the powerful men of Fort Stockton from the start, including Judge O.W. Williams, local entrepreneur Frank Rooney, and Herman Kohler, owner of the Kohler store. In 1892, Royal became sheriff of Pecos County and took on notorious Barney Riggs as his deputy. Always the antagonist, Royal opened the Gray Mule Saloon in February 1894, intentionally in direct competition with Kohler's store and saloon. And at one point, Barney Riggs and A.J. Royal built an adobe wall around it like a fortress. On August 6, 1894, Royal was also involved in, and some say he initiated, a shootout at the Kohler store. Marshals were sent to bring order back in town at the request of Judge O.W. Williams. Royal ran for re-election as sheriff in November of that year, but lost, and he didn't take it well. On November 21, 1894, as Royal was cleaning out his desk at the courthouse, a shotgun barrel was stuck through a partly cracked door. Someone shouted his name, and he was shot with buckshot in the head and neck. A.J. Royal had been assassinated. There were 2 others present in his office the day of the shooting. On the days leading up to the assassination, Royal was on the docket for 8 cases in court, under indictment in 3 and the plaintiff in 5. His killer was believed to be a member of the Rooney faction of an ongoing feud, or perhaps a hired gun. However, no one was ever indicted, and to this day, the murder is unsolved. The desk at which A.J. Royal sat when he was shot is housed in the Annie Riggs Memorial Museum. In the top right-hand drawer, remnants of that fateful day remain. Royal was buried in the Old Fort Cemetery, and his widow was sure to place the word "assassinated" on his tombstone. Annie and Barney had 4 children, bringing the blended family's grand total to 11. They remained married until the winter of 1901, when Annie filed for divorce. Buck Chadbourne, Annie's son-in-law, was named executor of the divorce. Besides being a talented gunman, Barney was also a very successful rancher. At the time of Barney's divorce from Annie, it was stated he had 600 head of stock horses, 250 head of stock cattle, shareholder and interest in stock and railway lands worth approximately $6,000. Unfortunately, on April 8, 1902, Buck Chadbourne went to pick up Annie and the kids at the oldest house, at the time owned by Matilda Pena. Miss Pena would watch Annie's children on occasion. When Barney came towards his buggy, cursing and waving his cane, Buck and Barney had altercations in the past related to the administration of the divorce settlement. Barney had even struck Buck with his cane the day before. Barney made a move with his hand, and Buck thought that perhaps Barney was going for his gun. Buck shot Barney, who got up and walked off, and Buck went after his team as they ran off when the shot was fired. Barney was unarmed. Buck was unaware of this. Barney was taken to the Riggs Hotel, at the time called the Kohler Hotel, where he died shortly later. Buck was tried for murder in Alpine but acquitted. The adobe structure housed 13 rooms. Coolness of the rooms was due to the 14-foot ceilings, 2-foot thick adobe walls, and the hotel's perch on a slight hill where guests could enjoy the breeze coming off of Comanche Springs on the wooden wraparound porch. It's said that the Annie Riggs Memorial Museum is one of the best preserved adobe structures of its period in all the Southwest. Annie Riggs owned and operated the hotel until her death in 1931. And in 1955, Fort Stockton Historical Society converted the private residence into a local historic museum. A stay at the Riggs Hotel in 1902 would run you 50 cents for half a bed per night. A meal at Annie's table would cost 35 cents. And advertisements of the day boasted the coolest rooms in town and old-fashioned buttermilk biscuits. The new Annie Riggs Memorial Museum features newly displayed exhibits depicting the pioneer Wild West, Indigenous Age, and Pecos County history, and development of Fort Stockton and surrounding areas. Exhibits are showcased in the original adobe rooms and hidden courtyard. The parlor, lobby, dining room, and kitchen recreate the original Riggs Hotel from the turn of the century with historic photographs, artifacts, collectibles, and period furnishing. The Fort Stockton Historical Society thanks you for visiting the Annie Riggs Memorial Museum in Fort Stockton, Texas.